the Dutch sustainable ocean community here, and we'll share our experiences over the last 3 years. As was already mentioned, I'm a physical oceanographer, but I was also interested in who is here in the room. So are there any other physicists here? I was afraid not, no. Biologists, maybe, a few. Chemists. I read political science, maybe, yeah. And who are the people from outside university? So there are a couple as well, right? So we already here in the room have quite a transdisciplinary group of people together. So a lot of the projects I will be sharing with you are beyond my expertise, right? Because we kind of support a lot of different programs. So my main focus is going to be on what if you have a good idea or a very exciting thing that you want to solve, some of the challenges that the ocean is facing, how can you make sure that you reach the impact that you want to reach? And it's not so straightforward, and especially within the institution, what we've learned, there are a few preconditions that you really need to make the impact that you want. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I wanted to dive in with a little story. This is a story that's not completely based on reality and a little bit exaggerated, but bear with me. So this is Nora. She's a PhD candidate, and she's studying how floating stuff in the ocean can converge or diverse. So she's very good at running simulations. She has very well-cited papers. She quickly joins the network of ocean modelers. So it's all going really well. And then one day she got a message from an NGO who contacted her, and they were in the process of suing a soda bottle company for littering in marine protected areas. And they thought maybe her simulation could help in their case. So Nora was like, yeah, this is exciting, right? I can finally do something tangible with my research. So she went to her supervisor and asked, should I do this? And he said, yeah, sure, go ahead. But he was not really involved. He was very busy with his own personal grant writing that took up all his attention. So Nora went in this meeting alone, and she presented very enthusiastically all her equations and simulations and etc. And the other side of the table didn't really understand what she was talking about. So the conversation kind of died out. Nothing really came from it. So that was this picture. Forgot to click. And in the end, Nora defended her thesis successfully, but societally invisible, which is a little bit exaggerated, of course. But my question for you is, what do you think was missing in Nora's environment that could have helped her research have impact beyond the scientific community? There's an open question. You can reach out. Yes?
Facilitator? Someone who could facilitate?
A facilitator, yes. So, for example, in a conversation that she was having or preparing her for that meeting. Definitely. Anyone else?
Environment, you mean in her home institution, or what do you mean?
Yeah, so in a broader sense, yeah. Anything else?
Better knowledge of the discussion partners and their state of interest and knowledge.
Yes. So and what could have helped her there, because she was kind of alone, right? So the supervisor was not really helping out here.
Well, the person who first contacted her probably would have been the first person to help in finding out and explaining a bit better.
Yeah, so have more of like a preparatory meeting. It might also have helped. Oh, sorry. See.
Maybe someone that could have helped her with popularizing her science.
Yes, with the translation part. Yeah, definitely. Maybe a little bit of training in transdisciplinarity could have helped. We don't offer that at our university. We're working on that. I'll come back to that later. So they already mentioned a few things. What I will be focusing on are 3 key preconditions that were missing in our environment. One of them is a sense of community. Because Nora was part of the community of physical oceanographers, but that's a community linked by discipline, by expertise, right? What you really need is a community that's linked by a passion or something like a shared emotion. So I'll talk a lot about that. Then a supporting infrastructure. So from our institution, what can you put in place to help in these more transdisciplinary projects that for example, a facilitator or someone that can translate the science or can help with that. And the other thing I'll briefly touch on is intrinsic motivation. And what I mean with that, I'll come back to that later. And before I dive in, there are two words here that I wanted to put a little bit of emphasis on. So transdisciplinary and impactful, and share the definition that we have at our university so that we're more or less on the same page here. Because they're really buzzwords. A lot of people work on that. So this is the definition for transdisciplinarity that we use in Utrecht. So it's research that integrate knowledge across academic disciplines and with non-academic stakeholders to address societal challenges. And it's guided by the principle that scientific rigor meets societal relevance. So it's not consultancy. It's also not having a research outcome and then going to a stakeholder and say, here, do something with it. It's really about co-creation and about working on implementable solutions. As I mentioned, it's not straightforward to work in a transdisciplinary way. You need some kind of competence building. That's something that we're working on in the university. And the other thing is that it connects to a lot of different buzzwords out there. I think for every word here in this graph, we have someone at the university that advises on it or does an impact assessment on it or something else. So it's all connected. And we're also trying from our institution to connect those people as well, to have them talk to each other, because they're basically talking about very similar aspects of getting our research implemented in a good way. Okay, so the other word was impactful. I'm gonna be very brief here. Impact is a very difficult word and there are very different ways of, well, it means something different for everyone. I think from speaking as a community manager, a lot of the impact that we have, you cannot measure. So I like this quote, so everything that can be counted does not necessarily count, and everything that counts cannot necessarily be counted. Supposedly said by Einstein. I googled, not sure if it's from Einstein, just to say, be completely honest. But the problem here is, or the challenge that we face is that a lot of the funding requires you to specify what kind of impact you have. So a lot of our researchers are going to people doing impact assessments, which is important, but it's also sometimes a pity and sometimes it kind of leads away from the real impact that you want to make, right? So pathways to sustainability, which is one of our key terms. So that's all. Now we can go into these preconditions. And the first one is a sense of community. And as I said, it's based on a shared passion, right? Not on a discipline. And I'll share a little bit more about what the Sustainable Ocean Community in the Netherlands is and does. But first, what is a community? So the first one we addressed, you need a passion, a shared passion. I think here in the room you will have that, clearly. It needs to be diverse. We can also check that one off, right? So across disciplines and beyond academia. It needs to be inclusive. There needs to be a safe space that all voices can be heard and all perspectives. It's got to be collaborative. And what having a community helps you with extremely is finding synergies much quicker. And that also works really well in avoiding competition. You can be very inspiring. You can share stories, share experiences, spark ideas. And for us, our community is really bottom-up. So we really support bottom-up initiatives, and that's what shapes the community. So we do have a vision and a board, but basically it is up to the community what we do and what we do with our resources. So a little bit about this Dutch Sustainable Ocean Community. What is our vision or our mission? So first of all, what was really lacking in the Netherlands was a national platform for ocean science in a broader sense. People went to ocean sciences, they went to EGU, they went to, within their disciplines, but they were very not so aware of what was happening just in the Netherlands. And it's not a huge country, right? So they could have worked together way more. So we really try and put a lot of our effort and resources into boosting this national platform across disciplines and across academia. So in particular with industry, policy, and society. And then, as I said, it's a bottom-up driven community. So basically everything that comes up that has anything to do with the ocean challenges defined by the Ocean Decade, that's stuff that we are happy to support or help with. But there are two main things that we focus on a little bit more. The first one is ocean literacy and ocean governance. They're very interlinked. And there you have to know a little bit about the Dutch culture, or the way a general Dutch citizen looks at the ocean. It looks like at the ocean as it's the enemy, right? We keep the water out, and we're excellent at that, having dikes, and we're below sea level, so it kind of makes sense. We had these disastrous flooding events. So that's the way we see the ocean, and we enjoy the ocean, enjoy swimming in it, maybe not in the Netherlands, but then somewhere in the south. But there's really this kind of enemy relationship. And that's something we really want to change. Because we want people to realize that we need the ocean, and we should thank the ocean for keeping us alive, and we need people to care so we can also protect the ocean. So that's a strong focus of ours. And the other one is that now we have this big national platform, and we have people from different disciplines being able to find each other. We can also much better address risk and potentials of various ocean-based solutions. Whether that's on marine carbon dioxide removal is one of the topics, deep sea mining, these kind of topics, and really go not only focus on the technical aspects, but in particular focus on more ethical and governance related issues to that as well. And lastly, so Utrecht University, together with the Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research, we're the main hub for training the next generation of ocean professionals. So it's kind of our duty to also, if we have this network, to help them connect to this network and to provide opportunities and etc. So I'll say a bit more about that later. So we started about 3 years ago, building up this network. We now reach more than 600 people across the Netherlands, all kinds of organizations. 2/3 is academics, 1/3 outside academia, and across all disciplines. Still mainly natural sciences, which kind of makes sense. But it's like, we feel that we get more and more towards a very well representation of ocean professionals in the Netherlands. A little bit about the governance, very shortly. So we do have an advisory board, which represents different faculties of the university and different departments at NIOS, which is this Institute for Sea Research. And then we have a management team to kind of make stuff happen. And since about a year, we have the Ocean Decade Committee now in the Netherlands. So we are tightly connected to that. There are a few people in the advisory board who are also in the Decade Committee. And my student assistant, Kjeld, is the coordinator of the Early Career Ocean Professional Program in the Netherlands. So it's all very tightly linked, which is brilliant because we can make sure that everything is aligned really well. And of course, we face challenges, or have faced challenges, we're still facing them. One of them is to build a community, you need trust, and building trust takes a lot of time. So when I started, it was a lot of one-to-one conversations within the university, especially outside, over the phone, because emailing people doesn't work, or at least work better if you speak to them personally. Having very small initiatives to start with, and getting your foot in the door of bigger initiatives, so that with the goal that if people receive an email from you, they don't mark it as spam, but they actually know what the sustainable ocean community is. So that takes time. Then I mentioned it is a bottom-up driven initiative, but if no one knows that you exist, there's not a lot to go from. So you need this right balance between what the advisory committee can do for you and kind of start the initial flow of things that you want to achieve, and how people from the community then feel confident that they can also contribute. And lastly, which is a bit of a tricky one, where our funding is coming from Utrecht University and from the Sea Research Institute, so NIOS. But that means that they have interests in the community and have their own ideas about it. But we're also very much a community for the entirety of the Netherlands, so everyone is welcome. Which means that there are sometimes conflicting interests that we have to deal with, and also that sometimes people don't feel like they belong. So they see we have to smartly make choices about which logos we use on which events. And for example, another example is some people really don't like the word ocean. We think the ocean is everything that's more saline than zero. But we have a big coastal community in the Netherlands that really doesn't agree. So they don't really feel represented, and we don't want to change the name. So it's, yeah, so these kind of small things that we have to deal with. Okay, so now we have this community kind of working and growing, and then we have to nurture it. If you don't do anything, it will fall apart. So maintaining the community, we do the usual things, right? We have a newsletter, we have a website, we have a relatively active LinkedIn account. But you also need this, right? So you need something where on an annual basis you can come together and meet each other in person and see where you are and have a great networking event. So we do that as well. We just had the second one in June. We always do it around World Ocean Day. So we can work across these interfaces, right? So science, policy, society. So for science policy, we have a National Ocean Conference where all ocean professionals are welcome to join, and we share highlights, we celebrate highlights, and it's really based on networking. But then for the science society interface, we act kind of as an umbrella for all the events that take place in the Netherlands that have anything to do with the ocean on the 8th of June. And for that we collaborate with musea. So it's not a lot of work, so we support them in developing activities on the day. We make sure it's communicated across the Netherlands with the same kind of feel and look. And we provide them a list of ocean experts that they can use, that can provide a talk or an activity or a demonstration. So it's an excellent way of also providing a platform for early careers to get in touch with the public about their research. So it's also a training opportunity. This is just a general inspiration board here. I just wanted to mention, so this again is it's not that we as a sustainable ocean community do this ourselves. It's again a really co-creation of different partners that all had kind of the same idea about this and working together. So one of them is the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. They provided quite a lot of funding and are also actively involved in shaping these days. Another example is the Naturalis Biodiversity Center, which is both a research institute and a very cool museum. If you ever in the Netherlands, go there. And they provided our venue for us. So these things are very nice to come together and make the best out of it. So then we can move on to the second precondition about supporting infrastructures. And then I'm going to zoom out a little bit, or zoom in, I don't know, focus on Utrecht University a bit more, how that's governed there. Because at the university and at many universities, everything is structured by discipline, right? And these disciplines, well, they're in faculties. And faculties are these silos, and they all have their own way of working. And often people don't know who is working at another faculty or where they're even based, in which building, because it's across the city. So they don't really talk to each other that much. And what Utrecht University tried to do to open up these silos a little bit is that they introduced what you call strategic themes. They're overarching themes that connect all the faculties. And they have 4 of them. So one is dynamic of use, it's more on education. One is institutions for open science, it's about, among others, democracy. One is life sciences, that makes a connection with the university hospital. And the 4th one is pathways to sustainability. And I only put 3 faculties here because these are the 3 that mainly work together within this theme. So science, geoscience, and law, economics, and governance. And pathways to sustainability really focuses on getting bureaucracy and administrative stuff more flexible, so that collaboration across these faculties is easier, and also helps with reaching out to the outside world, so getting partners involved and offering support for that. And it's interesting to know that it is a network of networks. So we actually have 9 communities within Pathways to Sustainability, where the ocean community is one of them. But we also have communities that focus on food or on cities or on the circular economy. And there's also overlap, of course. So, and all these communities have a community manager. And they all are completely flexible in how they're shaped, what their mission is, how they want to work. So there are a lot of differences, but we also run into very similar things. So we meet with the managers, we meet every week to understand what's going on and to help each other and collaborate where we can. So, what can Pathways then do? One of the things is that we can offer funding, just as was just presented this morning as well. You also have some seed funding available, because the funding for transdisciplinary research is still a little bit limited in the Netherlands. It's changing, but not that fast. So we do offer funding for projects that would normally not really get funded. And there are different kinds. So we have seed funding, which is for really small projects that have a clear goal, like organizing a workshop or an exhibition or a training program, or things like that. And then we have a stepwise funding available. So the first one is called an incubator grant. This is a grant not for a project, but for a process. So we support building a consortium, co-creating a research question, things like that. And we with support, it's just not only the funding, but also we support with training and with management aspects, etc. And then once that consortium is built, they can apply for a signature grant, which is a project then, but it's a lot more money. And I just wanted to say here, we check per incubator whether it's suited for a signature grant or whether there's actually external funding possibilities, and then help with writing those proposals as well. So that's all nice, but then researchers still see transdisciplinary research sometimes as something extra that they have to do outside their normal working hours. They are still focusing on their H index and how many successful proposals they got. And that's something we're trying to change. And the only way you can change that is if you recognize researchers in a different way and award them in a different way. So a couple of years ago, Utrecht already revised their recognition and award system. We're definitely not yet there because it also requires a cultural shift, and that just takes a lot of time. But what it's basically based on, that it builds on in the core you have impact. So it's much more focusing on the impact instead of your and then I don't mean impact in the scientific community, but outside. And on leadership and team spirit. So they also want to try to get more a feeling of a team that you work with different roles. So you have people that really do the research, but you also have people that facilitate, that support, that do the project management, that it feels more like a team, and that everyone fits in this kind of recognition and reward system. So Pathways also helps with that a little bit by celebrating transdisciplinary projects by awarding this award. Small things that you can do, but we're definitely not there yet. I'm happy to discuss that today as well with you, how that is here. But it really needs a lot of time to gain trust and change this culture at the academic system. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that we have this strategic theme, but it wouldn't work if it's not completely supported by all the layers of the university. So it's actively supported by the deans of the faculties, actively supported by all the department heads. So they know that they can allow their researchers to spend time on projects that are linked to pathways to sustainability. And that maybe if they have too many teaching hours, that there may be another way of solving that. So it's not on top of their workload. Okay, and then a little bit about what we do for then the early careers, as I promised. So we're tightly connected to the Early Career Ocean Professional Network, which is something from the decade, right? But they don't get any funding. Don't know if anyone's aware here, but they get all the branding, but they don't get funding. So we help with that a little bit. So we do organize a yearly early career scientist symposia for PhDs and postdocs, and we're expanding on that so that all early career ocean professionals will be welcome. And from next year on, we will have an Ocean Ambassador program, so to make sure that they can bring their needs and perspectives into the discussion on education or on the way that we govern the community, and provide them with the opportunity to connect with the network. We actively help with building the consortia. We also actively try to get them to understand that they can apply for funding, because the funding that we have available is for everyone. It's not only for staff, but it's also for PhDs, or in particular for PhDs and postdocs, so they can extend their contract a bit longer and work on these projects and gain experience in that. And we actively help with the proposal writing as well, because we know what the requirements are for these funding schemes, and we can help with that. And then, as I mentioned, a little bit of competence training, because it's not built in the bachelor's or in the master programs. So a few years ago, they already developed what they call a transdisciplinary field guide. It's a website that guides to all the resources out there that you can help with doing transdisciplinary research. But then no one was really using it. So it's nice to have a website, but so we thought we should maybe also provide training, active training. So that's now there, and there are different modules, and it's very flexible, so we can, depending on what the team wants, we can pick a few of the models and provide a training. And then the idea is that the people that get trained become trainers themselves, so we can have this pool of trainers available to get everyone involved. And important to say, it's not just a training for researchers, right? It's also a training for example, the research support office, or for project managers, or anyone that's involved in these transdisciplinary processes. Okay, I think, and the other thing I didn't mention is, so we also actively collect stories to be kind of an inspiration for the community. And I wanted to share one of them with you here. So this is a PhD student who just defended her defense in the summer, and she is providing us with a key message about transdisciplinary.
Building trust and building relationships is really one of the key elements in transdisciplinary research and also in our project. I really try to spend ample of time in the community, because then I could really feel that people realize, oh, she's actually interested in us and not only in the research she's doing. And I could really feel how people are starting to open up more because they remembered me from the year before. I'm the PhD candidate on the Tipping the Iceberg project, in which we work together with the Aleut community living on St. Paul Island in Alaska to transform their food system towards a more food secure and sustainable future. We try to use many different activities that work for different community groups and also different generations. So really try to offer some diversity in the methods used there. My most important takeaway in this project is that it's really key to be able to work with other stakeholders on eye level to bring a lot of flexibility with you. So to not come with an already fixed structure in mind into the project and be like, okay, that's exactly the way we're going to do it, but to really be open for conversations, be open to change your plans and these kind of things.
Yes, so that's one example, but it's very nice to have these very short stories that resonate with other people, or they learn something, or they share what didn't work. And for Celia, it's quite nice. She has a very, very good podcast about her PhD, so I encourage you to look that up. And the podcast was not meant for other scientists or for the general public. It was actually part of her research project because she made it for that community to better communicate with them what kind of useful outcomes they could pick up. So it's a perfect example of a scientific outcome that's not a traditional paper, but still very valuable and gets to the people where it should get to. And she tried to get it also rewarded in her thesis. In the end, that didn't work out, but we're working on that, right? So that other, not only papers are accepted in your thesis. Okay, moving on to the last one. This is what a short one. But as I said, we're working on this cultural shift, but we're definitely not there yet. So you really need at least a handful of people that are really dedicated and really want to go beyond and above to get this community going and to keep inspiring other people. Without them, it's not going to work. So for us, that is this advisory board. So I'm very happy with them. They really drive change with their passion and commitment. They shape debates with critical perspectives, identifying gaps and opportunities, challenging established way of working, getting the university to be more flexible in some ways. So you really need these people. You do see them point all in a different direction. So you also need someone to, make sure that all their ideas that actually something happens. So that is something like a community manager or like a management team. They don't only facilitate, but they do a lot more. So they also do a lot of the translation, the communication, the getting all these connections. They are the spider in the web. They are the person that builds the trust. And of course, having a meeting like this here. So a shout out to Mala and her team, right, for organizing this. It's crucial to have those people on board. Okay. Not sure how much time I have left, but let's go into a few. Oh, perfect. Good. Let's go into a few examples of activities and projects that we do. And I wanted to start with one that is an example of one of the incubator projects that became a signature project and now inspired a new incubator project. So that's really an example of what this funding inspires. And I have a small inspiration video, and then I'll say more about the project.
We, the jellyfish, have been here in Earth's waters for the last 500 million years. We know the seas from the surface to its great depths. We have been here through the changes and damage your kind brought onto aqueous environments. But we have turned out to be more adaptive than others to the conditions you created for us all. As part of the ocean and the steady-state flux of marine ecosystems that feeds us, and as inhabitants of the watery wall, we need our home to be protected and sustainable.
So did anyone recognize the text that was underneath before she started scribbling on top of it? See if anyone wants to guess. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so the UN Declaration, right, for the ocean. It was, I think, adopted in 2022 on the UN Ocean Conference. A few people found that text very interesting and very human-centric focus. And they were especially wondering, because it states our ocean, our future, our responsibility, what the word our then meant exactly. So whose ocean are we talking about here? And how can we, how can the ocean and its non-human inhabitants get a voice, in particular in decision making? And how can we as humans listen to that? So it's a very philosophical question, something that for normal grants you would never get funding. But it started an incubator, and during that incubator they just asked this question to a bunch of people. So a lot of ocean professionals, and also to high school kids, for example, to policymakers, to people on the streets, just to get a general idea of how people would respond. And a lot of them said the ocean belongs to everyone. A lot of them said the ocean belongs to no one. It's not very tangible then, your outcome. But in that process, they also reached out to external collaborators. So that's how they formed a collaboration with the Embassy of the North Sea, which is an NGO that was already working on this for quite a while. They host a lot of parliamental things. I don't know if you know what it is, so that you have discussions, but then you represent an oyster or a jellyfish or whatever in your discussions. And they had very good connections to the Casco Art Institute, which is an art institute in Utrecht, who also has a lot of experience in working together with scientists. And because this is such an open and creative question, you need a wide range of expertise there to address it. I wanted to share one quote by Birgit Kaiser, who was, she's a comparative literature professor from the humanities faculty. And she said the following about this project. So a big part of the story of the modern world is the ocean, its colonial history, its function as a resource for humans, its exploitability. What if humans understood that this is a story of many, many voices that would make a difference? So this project also touched a lot about what I earlier said about ocean literacy. So in the end, they got a signature project. And the idea was to slowly build, with a series of meetings, slowly build a larger and larger network of a diverse group of people to address and brainstorm on this question. So we had a lot of brainstorm sessions and meetings and using the network to slowly grow this. We had a lot of reading groups because we quite quickly noticed that people speak a very different language and they completely don't understand each other on very normal words. So there were reading groups that just picked one word, and then there was literature provided from different disciplines, and then they would discuss that and share what they could get out of that. And then that all would build up towards an assembly, which we had last January, where everything comes together. So there were artists involved that would present their work at this assembly, and the idea was that at the assembly they would rewrite the UN Declaration, or parts of it, not the entire thing, from the perspective of ocean entities. And these ocean entities were seagulls, jellyfish, and nodules. Didn't have a good picture of a nodule, but that's what you dig up with deep sea mining. And it was a very interesting mix of having a traditional scientific conference and a very artistic experience that really opened up the creativity in people's mind. So on the left you can see we were in a theater, and the theater was an old swimming pool. So one of the breakout sessions was on the, well, here we're on top of the swimming pool. There we're on the bottom of the swimming pool. And there were really heated debates. It was not just a quiet interaction. It was really a heated debate on every little word that they wanted to change in the text. And it was moderated by people that were dressed by a costume designer that was also involved. So these are the seagulls. And they had these overhead projectors and were actively changing words while the discussion was ongoing. So that's an example of kind of what the outcome was. Speaking of impact, again, this is not measurable, right? What kind of impact did we have with this meeting? We do continue to share this story and this experience. For example, we went to UN Ocean Conference and presented our alternative texts. Also had kind of a silent poster demonstration in random places with this project. And as I said, it inspired a next incubator project. which is this one. This is a little bit out of the creative world and a bit more closer to the university, but focusing on ocean governance in a contested world order, and especially trying to figure out what pathways there are to secure a more just and more sustainable future ocean. And at the moment, it's a collaboration between law, history, ecology, and earth system governance. But as I said, this is an incubator, which means that it's completely open still to grow. So anyone interested here, please, you can find more information about the project and the people involved, and feel free to contact them and get in touch. So that was the first example. Second and the third one are shorter. So I just wanted to give one example of how if things don't work out, how can we still help? So a few years ago, a huge group of people came together to work on marine carbon dioxide in the Netherlands in a more holistic way. They were supposed to get a huge funding from the government, which didn't happen. I'll say more about the government in a minute. So they had this network, but they couldn't do anything. So in the end, when the community was slowly growing, one of the professors reached out to me and said, "Hey, we have this, we have a website, but nothing is happening. Can't we join forces and get things started to show that we maybe later on do have funding or need funding or can get some funding ongoing?" So we said, yeah, we can do that. So what they're focusing is on how marine carbon dioxide removal can be scaled up responsibly, by especially also focusing on the ethical aspects and the feasibility and other challenges that are there, the impact that it might have. So to be really thorough on that. And as I said, we had a lot of people contribute knowledge and time without any funding, and to shape this debate. And the nice thing, just to go a little bit quicker through it, so we organized a series of symposia on all the time focusing on different aspects of this bigger question. And by doing that, it was kind of picked up by our national research grant organization. And now we are in discussion with them. And they say, well, if we can do some kind of matching, we can actually have a big national call out there on this topic. So it was really this ripple effect that can, get more funding suddenly becoming available. And the last one I wanted to address, I quickly said something about our governance. So we at the moment, we don't really have a governance. We had one established 2 years ago, but that didn't work out. So we now have new elections end of October. And then somewhere mid-August, late August, the idea came up out of the community, shouldn't we do something with that? Bit late. But we thought, can we make something like a vote compass for the ocean, so for ocean protection? So what do parties say about ocean protection, literally, in their programs? So our goals were to give this overview. It's just an infographic with all the partners, all the parties, and then some statements, and how do they score on that. But then we have two other goals. One of them is to show that a lot of parties don't mention the ocean at all, so that it just should get way more attention than it gets in our political debate. And then the third one is, if we're doing this anyway, then we can also do a little bit on ocean literacy as well at the same time. And well, to connect it back to the preconditions, late August is very late to start with a project like this, but it was crazy how quickly we mobilized partners and that all got excited for this project, and all jumped on board. So having this community and just throwing it out there, it really worked extremely well for this idea. And the other thing for me personally, what I found really nice and inspiring, was that it's a really transdisciplinary co-creation process. So we hosted expert meetings every 2 weeks that just they were open and people could join them and could share their ideas and of how to shape this vote compass. And it just, with a little bit of preparation from our side, it just went from meeting to meeting to meeting to where we are now. And every meeting there was a different group of people from completely different disciplines. from within and outside academia. So it was a very nice way of seeing how this could work. So that's more or less all that I wanted to share. Some QR codes, you can contact me. I will be here today and tomorrow. Happy to chat more. And hope you enjoy your stay here. Thank you.
Thank you.